fancy intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
And Hammy, of course, welcome to you.
Thank you.
What's up, buddy?
Happy to be here.
I mean, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Really, I would hope so.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to it. This won't shock people, but I do agree with TJ on the month. I think that the Gorn arc in general was one of our two back-to-back better months that we've had in a while.
It's easy to say that it's the best 2 months this year. And
I think so. I think it was a strong arc overall.
Strong start, okay ending, but overall good. That's what I would say. And going by the surveys that we did, I would say that. But before we get into that, I do want to do a couple of things prior, because we do have a lot of late night EUers here tonight. So appreciate all the people from UK and EU who are attending. We do have a new community manager joining you, who's not new, but we'll cater more to those time zones. Would you like to mention them real quick in case nobody's hurt?
Yeah, we have a new community manager on Official. His name is Simpoli, and like myself, he worked on the private server for well over a year, so he knows how to work with players and how to track stuff down. I was very happy when he decided to come over to join me over there to cover the EU time zone because of his experience. And so far, he's been doing a fantastic job. I don't know if you noticed, but we have faction roles on Official now. Even though we only need Romulan, we don't need the rest. I don't know why we need the others, but whatever. We are now also introducing time zone roles where we can target, say, APAC or EU or US if those servers are having an issue or we need an update for those specific players instead of just blasting it out to everyone. I think that's working really well. The last thing that Simpoli, and this has been kind of an effort with Simpoli and a few of our mods, like On Call Doc, is really getting into Reddit and making Reddit better. I think, Rev, you and I were talking about that the other day, that the toxicity level there has dropped, I think, significantly. And that is also thanks to Simpoli.
Yeah, I actually only had one person on Reddit since I've been there the past 4 weeks because I've, quote unquote, returned to Reddit. I've only had one person on there telling me I'm a horrible person for monetizing YouTube videos. So, yeah, it's actually, for anybody that's experienced Reddit, that's actually a really good ratio. So,
yeah,
it really is.
That's winning. That's winning.
That is winning. So that's good. And I think overall that means more communication. Now, that doesn't fix every problem that we have, but I am not going to complain about better and more communication in STFC and in our little Scopely sphere. So as much as I love what me and DJ do, for a while now, too much of our role has been communicating things the game's not communicating. And if you have noticed, the past 2 months, I haven't had to do that as much, which actually is nice, allowing me to focus more on content like I did today. Calculating power for your account and whether or not that matters. Actually doing pieces on the game about education instead of like, oh, y'all probably had no idea this was happening. Here's a quick video.
Yeah, I'm glad that you can actually focus more on the content stuff and not have to worry about comms. I think we've been consistent since I think March or April when we really started getting, making sure players are aware. I think, and we're even starting to track now just how much we're giving to players each week, and we want to keep the updates coming.
Well, that's hopefully the plan. And those that don't know, me and Hammy got into it last month. I had to dude, I will give you things to make communications on. Don't ever feel like you got to go 3 days without saying something. I will give you something to tell the people. We will give you something.
Yep. Rev actually pinged me in DM and be like, hey, we haven't heard anything in like 3 days. And I'm like, we don't have anything, buddy. And he's like, no.
We do. We have multiple good things.
Well, like 3 or 4 things just landed in my lap. And all of a sudden it came to life. So maybe Rev has the touch. I don't know. But he made the comms appear. And the rest of the week, I think we were really consistent.
Yeah. So let's start getting into some of the points of this month, which there will be several of them. We're going to start with event store currency, because this is one that me and you just talked heavily about in a meeting yesterday. I know DJ is notorious for having tracked this for the past 18 years. So he's very familiar with how this works. And I'll discuss with you the main issue is the currency amount, but the root of that problem, especially being the ticket issue, but overall currency. Now, on the positive side, this was significantly better than the Enterprise Arc. For 3 months, everybody, even to a degree spenders, did not get much. This time around, it was significantly improved. But on the negative side, still not where it was last year. But let's start getting into that.
Yeah. No, and I think first off, the fact that it was a pretty big improvement over the last event store we ran is positive movement. It's moving in the right direction. That being said, I did hear from players on official about wanting more sourcing for event store currency. I think that there's probably a number of factors that led to there being a little bit less than people are used to. First off, the numbers do fluctuate pretty regularly when it comes to event store currency. The end of Enterprise was particularly low, and so I like the fact that we're bouncing back. The other thing is that we typically don't have event stores 1 month apart from each other. And that, I think, also might have contributed to the amount. But overall, this is very consistent with what I've...
We've had, what is the DJ? We've had three 2 month runs. But again, DJ, hold it. We have, remember,
okay.
I just showed, but keep in mind, DJ, in the meeting yesterday, I just showed Hammy all the numbers. So he's seen them. He knows what 2 month event stores have paid. He acknowledges this is lower than we want it to be collectively.
Mm-hmm.
But he does want to point out that we made a big jump from Enterprise Part 3.
Yeah.
Because those aren't mutually exclusive. They're both true. But as a player, I really want to hammer, regardless of the improvement, it's still a drastic step back, with a big reason being because of how the tickets have now become non-currency.
But right, what was it, last December where we went bonkers?
No, it was 2 Decembers ago. It was the great December 2022, where over 800,000 currency got paid out. But again, that's like, I don't know, man. That's a long time ago. Your hair was less gray. I had more hair. That was a very long time ago. So I don't know if we can really go back that far. But yes, and look, 800,000, even for me being ever the optimist and ever the player advocate, that's a lot. But still, there does need to be, and again, this is the word that we always hammer on, standard, right? And even if it's every month, if we have a 2 month arc, we know each month is worth, quote unquote, an X amount. So we know what to expect after a 3 month to an event store, after a 2 month to an event store, instead of it being. Go ahead, DJ.
I have a little bit of problem with that. And Rev, you're going to remember now. Granted, it's been a long time, okay, and maybe the philosophy has changed. But if you go back a couple of years, 3 years, you go back to TNG Part 5, which is where all of this started, where we started tracking, we started counting, because that event store was a 5 month. That was a 5 month arc, finishing up with an event store after 5 months. And at that time, we assumed that there was going to be a historically high amount of loot, because it had been 5 months since an event store. Now, granted, we are talking, sorry, I'm losing my hat. We're talking September of 2021.
Yeah.
Philosophy could have changed, but it's not been communicated as to whether or not that has been changed. But at that time, Scopely came out and said the amount of time in between event stores has no bearing on the amount of loot that we pay. That the amount of loot that we pay is simply a mathematical equation, a dollar equivalent currency that we're going to pay out on an event. So I find less credibility in the response that it's only been 2 months since an event store, because we've been told by Scopely that doesn't matter.
Standardization. And you do raise a good point, because I saw your face as soon as I said that. That the proximity to event stores, while close, only 1 month apart, is you would admit that is very close for event stores, right?
I would agree. Historically, what you guys have done are the Dabo wheels. All right. And thank you for that graphic, Rev. That's exactly what I'm going for. Historically, when you do a 2 month arc, you bring the Dabo wheel. Now, I'm not unhappy that there was an event store. I think that's great. But your own communications, Scopely's, not yours, Hammy, but Scopely's communications of the past indicate that there is no relative connection between the amount of time between an event store and the amount of event store currency. Are you saying that Scopely has changed that philosophy with regards to event stores?
Actually, no. And even my response doesn't really make sense because the proximity would have made it go down instead of up. So that I don't think actually works. But this is the thing. I'm still going to go back to this point that it did improve from Enterprise to Gorn. Is it still low? That's what I'm hearing from players, 100%. Like,
it's the second lowest event store of all time.
Right. But if it was the actual lowest, that would be even worse, right?
You are ever the optimist.
I mean, I guess, but you know, even as recently as December,
this is the definition of 2 steps backward after 1 step forward, right? Like,
sure.
So, or 1 step forward after 2 steps backward. You had a 2 step backwards moment really badly with Enterprise E, and yes, you took a step forward, but this is also something that I talked about. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat will really speak to this. We're also at a stage in the game where you need more currency because there's more you need to actually unlock now. Because event stores have always been a catch-up mechanic. That was the basic standard of what it is. Sure, there has been that financial element, which, DJ, I'm glad you brought it up because I was curious if we were moving to a months are worth X amount versus dollars are worth X amount, as we've done with pack evaluations and stuff. But either way, there's a double-edged sword there where you need more things and you got less, right? And a big part of that was based around the ticket payout. That's where you see the greatest shift. So it's, what is the idea? I know we just had a combo about this yesterday, so I don't expect definite answers, but what are the conversations at least like about what are we going to do with this, the next event store that we have come around, which could be sooner rather than later?
I mean, like, I'm not really in the currency discussions. You know, I can raise this and I have been raising this, but I'm not part of those discussions that actually decide how much event store currency is going to be going out to people. I am taking notes, and I know that we want more of a standardization. I don't know if that's going to be possible either because it's going to probably change from arc to arc. But I do hear this, and I knew that this was going to be one of the biggest topics from this past month, and I will try and get some answers for this and see if we can get some more. But again,
beyond answers, here's what I would ask of you.
Yeah,
will you at least take the role to advocate for this? Obviously, me and DJ are going to. But do you see where the players are coming from and at least agree that it should continue to move in the direction that we just had?
I mean, I would prefer to see that because I get all the feedback on Discord and I know how vocal players are about this. I would like to see that. But again, that's not saying...
I'm not asking you to make the decision. I'm asking you to fight for it. Right?
Yeah. I would like to see it if possible. I'd like to see players happy, and if that is something that we can do, I would be happy to try and advocate for it. But again, those types of conversations are not the ones where I can, I have a lot of sway. The best I can do is basically go back and keep talking and seeing what we can do for the next event store.
If I can ask a question, and I don't know if this was in the show prep notes, so I'll apologize if it's not, but do you have an explanation or an insight into why the ticketed events were changed in the first place? And by the way, let me say that was not a right or wrong decision. There's actually a lot of players who prefer the resources and materials. So I'm not saying that was a bad decision versus a good decision, but it was a change, right? What was Scopely's reason for that change? Were there that many players who wanted resources and materials in their ticketed events? Because if this is the side effect, I wonder if they would reevaluate their feedback.
I think we were trying something new with the ticketed events to see if we could get, if by switching it up, because I feel like on issues like this, we're probably gonna get it from both sides. Where some people will like the change, some people will, prefer the mats and resources, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Even Rev and I did have a discussion about this, where it was suggested that we double the events to 18 events, so you can pick either between.
Yeah, so DJ, we kind of discussed this. I shot 2 options. I said one, what you could do is take tickets and simply give players both options, which would obviously put more work on live ops. Give them 9 sets for materials and 9 sets for event store currency. You choose what you want to go after. The flip side of that is if we're going to provide materials in the month, then you boost the amount of event store currency you provide in event store or in SMS for those type of events. Either one is an option. The easier option is simply boosting SMSs that pay out event store currency versus giving out 18 events over a weekend. But either way, that is probably the two most obvious pathways, because you can't do it through heroic SMSs. That's another thing we'll talk about today with an overload of heroic SMSs in this past month. And you certainly can't do it through SLBs and ALBs because that eliminates a majority of your players. Or Voltron does bring up, you make event stores into Dabo wheel style where you choose. But it kind of already is with that, but the values of like materials in event stores have not been evaluated in a very, very long time. So,
although, and just to bring up one positive note about the event store, because this was something that the CM team really kind of pushed for. And I don't know what the general reaction, but getting the extra board cube blueprints.
That's something I fought very hard for. Yeah, I mean, I think that was a good thing. I am disheartened's not the right word. I don't like that so many things got shot down. Obviously, the things that we've been pushing for. Some of those I understand. I know myself, Lube, give a shout out to Lube. He's in bed by now. But shout out to Lube. I've been pushing really heavy to get FTs moved into event stores. We talked about this last day of the game, right? And it's never happened until it happens. So I'll continue to push for it to happen. I know DJ's on board with that as well. He wants to see the Ferengi Whip and the Proton be available in the event store. But beyond that, there's also other things. We talk about standardization. We talk about when special ships become available. Really wanting to see the NX-01 be there, this event store. So there's a lot of layers to that. I do acknowledge good things. Like, there were a lot of officers I wanted added, but I won't deny that there are plenty of people who were happy to go after Dr. Tiana when you added 7 lower decks officers, even though that didn't help me and a lot of other players at all. So we did have 2 major additions, just not necessarily the additions that a lot of people have been asking for.
Right, but there's still, like you said, there still were a lot.
It's still a positive, right? It's
very much so.
I don't want to sit here and crap on it, because I did work with Unit, and I know other people did as well, so I don't want to try to take all credit. But I did work really hard with the Arc Runner and talking to them about, hey, this is what we need to have the board cube available to all players. And there's still issues with that. We had a lot of people having to go to customer support because they weren't seeing it when they should have been and stuff. But moves were made to make it to where people could get the greatest paperweight in Star Trek Fleet Command. So I do appreciate that. I want to make that clear. I appreciate it.
I mean, you didn't have to put the paperweight part at the end. Like, everything was going
still love the cube.
I love the cube because you're upper 50s.
I like it.
Yeah, because you're upper 50s. Look, I love it. I keep it in my dock because it's gorgeous. It just won't have much utility for me for some time.
I'm using my cube right now to do my dailies. So
I'm just saying, it won't have much utility for me for a long time. But it is fantastic once you get to that mid-upper 50s.
Right, but even outside of that, there were a lot of players that still wanted it.
Absolutely, because they're Trek fans, right? At the end of the day, most of us are a bunch of nerdy Trek fans, and we want a board cube, or the artifact from Star Trek Picard, which is what it is. So I'm very happy to have it because it's a cube, and I want people to have that ability as well. I just can't really use it. Now, Racer Brian, if at level 65, your board cube is a paperweight, you're board cubing wrong.
I was gonna say that's
more cubing wrong.
I don't know, man. That's like the primary ship for almost any G6 player.
He is a little bit at an awkward stage though, where he's waiting to get that rare Sigma ship that takes his board cube to that really, really next level. But I would say even at 65, the board cube should be one of your primary ships.
I would imagine so. I want to, if I can, I want to come back on the event store contents. We talked a little bit about the loot. Can I ask what the general sentiment is, or the challenge / difficulty in getting things added to the event store? Like, why is this a battle? Event stores have always been a catch-up mechanic. Like, that's what they were made for, was to give players access to items that they might have missed out on, or were unable to complete, or had partial progression on, and gives them a chance to kind of come back. And I feel like we have stepped away from that. Agreed. The mentality of the event store at Scopely headquarters has changed. Why is it such a challenge to get things added in? It was built as a catch-up mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I get it. I love the idea of having it as a catch-up mechanic, but I was actually pretty impressed with the officers that we had. Like, if we want to, because I think having the officers that we did kind of rewards the players that are playing right now. Like, especially Chapel. Having Chapel in the event store, I think, was huge because she
belonged there. This was her arc, you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's what DJ's saying is that's the already expected part, right? But I actually was having a conversation with somebody from Section 31. Keep saying that Server 31 today, and they were talking about people in their alliance who had missed, had left for like 3 months and came back, and their first reaction was, "There's just too much, and I can't do it." And we don't really have mechanics that encourage you to catch up, like this event store. I mean, it did not help you catch up the past 3 months if you missed. It helped you get Chapel, which was fantastic. But it did not help you if you had decided to take a 3-month break and something had piqued your interest. Maybe you quit because you were frustrated. Then you came back to the game because you saw something came out, but now you feel completely left out because you don't have enough to catch up.
So
it used to be, and I'm sorry, let me just point out one historical trend. With the exception of officers, Rev, and you're going to remember this, officers have always been the current arc, okay? And that's fine, and I appreciate that. I think that there's a certain logic to that. But outside of officers, ship blueprints, other additions into the game, building materials, those have literally, up until probably, Rev, what do you think? The last 18 to 20 months, they have always been there, the next event store. The Meridian was there, the very next event store. Discovery blueprints were there, the very next event store. Cerritos blueprints were there, the very next event store, because it is supposed to be a catch-up mechanic. But now it feels like we've got content that is hitting a year and a half, 2 years old in the game.
Buildings that aren't there. Like you can't
Forbidden
get
technology. I mean, how long have we been asking? How long have we been asking for the whip or the original Q's trials artifacts that, by the way, are fundamentally necessary to make forbidden technology a viable feature for a grinding player? I mean, it's not like we're trying to elevate everybody to a payer status or give everybody all the stuff that the payers have for free. We're talking forbidden technology is a dead feature without a few of these key artifacts that right now continue to be paid only and have been paid only for 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. And I can't just say, oh, we're going to put FTs into the event store, whenever. We are approaching in July. There'll be I think they've been out for a year. So I'm not quite sure how long it usually takes. For ships, you said it's a lot more frequent. The NX-01 in this store, I think that would not have been possible, only because it came out, in February, I think? And that's still
that's
close.
DJ's point. And again, we're talking historically. That's happened before. The Talios was in the Cerritos' event store month, which was Anthology Part 2 or whatever. Those were both back-to-back 2-month arcs. And again, I do want to move on to the Gorn Eviscerator itself, because I don't want to get stuck, because we can easily get stuck on comments. The biggest thing is standardization. For a couple things I think we've learned here with the event store. One, what is the event store's purpose and actual value? And then two, what can we reasonably fight for, and timelines for what we can fight for to get things in there? Are the two biggest things that we take away from this. Not expecting you to have the answer to those things.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I can try. I can see what I can raise. I would love to see FTs in the event store at some point. Maybe even kind of more artifacts as well. Just to explore what we can do with it. But again, I don't know what the timeline is or when we'll be able to get those.
All right, speaking of timelines, Gorn Eviscerator, the event. I know this was a really deep combo me, you, and Beck had yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to let you open up with the Gorn Eviscerator, your thoughts, as well as everything you've said so far for those who haven't heard it about the event that will give the Gorn Eviscerator.
First off, I can confirm that the event is coming in the next month. So we do have a timeline for when it's actually coming. Secondly, I think that we were transparent with that it was coming in the future. I think there was some miscommunication because there were a couple CCs that said that it would be.
Hold on.
DJ, let him finish. DJ, let him finish.
This is I was not aware or did not see this in any of our official communication that it would be out on like a free-to-play path on day one. I think we did that for the NX01 because it was in the Borg X-Borg refinery. But as far as the Gorn Eviscerator, I don't believe that we actually said that it was going to be available day one, because it would have. We did say, however, that it was going to be on the same timeline as the NX01, that's going to be about I think 100 days, because it's 2 blueprints per day that you can pull from that. So we were pretty transparent when it came to the timeline. Could have we been able to give more specific timeline, like, it's going to happen in June? Absolutely. I would love to get kind of at least a ballpark figure for when, it's going to start trickling down to free to play. But like you said, Rev, this was one of the hottest topics that I heard throughout, I think, April and May. This was the number one thing, and I kept going back to the team, just trying to get a little bit more info. But when we, when we launched the Eviscerator, we said it was coming in the future. I wish we could have been more specific, but that's what we went with.
All right, DJ, without going too clausy, I'm giving you the floor. What I'm going to do after you say something, I'm going to read out exactly what was said. I think it's easy to understand how there could be some confusion based on that. But
I agree. I agree. When he says that a content creator might have gotten a little overzealous with the communication, he's referring to me, and that's fine.
He's referring to me too. Don't throw yourself under the bus. I'm right there with you.
Because here's what I said, is that the free-to-play path was going to be announced on day one. I did not say that it was going to present on day one. I said it was going to be announced on day one, which is also what you guys did. All right. You announced that there would be that there would be an event that sourced this ship. What I don't understand and what is so odd and peculiar is why the secrecy about that. Hey, community, we're going to launch an event. All right. But we're not going to launch it for 30 days. I don't understand why the cloak and dagger on this thing, man. Like, if we're going to say, hey, community, there's going to be a free-to-play path, which, by the way, was appreciated. When we saw the patch notes, we loved that. That was welcome, all right? But Scopely using the method of FOMO is not appreciated. It would have been cool, and I'm a huge thing for this, like, long before, you and I started working together. I like the position of being an educated consumer. I want to know what my data is. Am I waiting 4 months? Am I waiting 6 months? Am I waiting 12 months? And honestly, that may actually drive more sales your way, because I'm going to say, listen, I see this Eviscerator refinery. It's valuable to me, and I do not want to wait 6 months to have it. I want it now. All right? So I applaud you coming out, and I understand why the community hangs on the words of influencers like Rev and myself. We said that the path would be announced on day one, all right? Which is what we interpreted as the sharing with us, that the path would be announced.
And let me, DJ, go ahead and I want to read verbatim. Keep in mind, context is always important when we're doing things like this, Hammy. So read or hear the words of what I'm saying as a player who is reading the patch notes the day all of this is rolling out. Here's exactly what was said before it was gone back and edited. I'm not saying that the edit was bad. I'm simply putting out exactly what was said. There will also be a weekly, this is after the entire Gorn Eviscerator is laid out, verbatim. There will also be a weekly Gorn technology event that all players will be able to participate in, that will reward players with blueprints, period, end. That's exactly what it said verbatim, implying this is happening now with this patch run. That's exactly how it reads to every player, hence the frustration. Then Scopely went back and edited it and said date to be determined. So Scopely is acknowledging that you see why we interpreted like that. When you give me a patch notes that says this is everything coming this month, and you list the event with the name after going through full description of what the ship is, I'm interpreting the event's coming right now.
Sure. I get how that could be understood. I also like to think that when it came to the announcement, we could have been more specific about it, but that was the information that we had, and that's what the team went with. I understand what you guys are saying and why we should have had more details about it. But to DJ's point, like, there was actually a lot of confusion from players that I was seeing on the official Discord that they were expecting it on day one. And I think when some of the announcements went out saying that the information is going out on day one, that was misunderstood, because that is what I heard from a lot of players. And I had to go back to the team and check to see what the actual plans were. And again, we did have to update the text to show that it was going to be in the future. But having the free-to-play sourcing from, I think, day one or even week 1 or week 2 would have been tricky for the launch arc. I mean, if you have something like the NX01, that got free-to-play path on day 1. Like, you had the path, you had the idea of how long it was going to be. We did put comms out saying that it was going to be similar to the NX01. I remember typing that multiple times when we launched this arc. So if anybody read those messages, you would know that would be about 100 days. Starting now, should we have been more specific about when the events? Probably. And I would love to get to a point where we get there. But there was a lot of miscommunication also that made people think that it was coming out on day one.
So that's the point I want
the
to make.
timeline is 100 days.
Right. Now, I am glad, for those who are listening, stymie your anger just enough to have heard when this event is running, starting in June. So you are getting it starting now. So now you actually know when it's happening. But I do think it's very important for me, because y'all have pushed the website for a long time for various reasons. Like, you want people to go to the store, you want people to go for the news. And as a player, that's exactly how it reads, right? And future, we definitely need to be more clear. I would argue that because it's an event style, it should have launched this month anyway, but that's a different combo and a longer combo. DJ, do hit your points. I do want to talk about the ship itself, but I did want to air the frustration of the communication on this, because that was also when we did our survey, when we talked about communication as y'all's grade. You got a good grade from players on communication, but the comment section was lit up about the Gorn Eviscerator and how it was communicated to the player base.
I have one final follow-up, Rev, if you'll allow me. Now that you have said that the event is coming in June, but we've also said that the timeline of acquisition is the NX01. Are we looking at 100 more days, or are we looking at 70 more days?
I don't know.
I'm going to take a gander and say it works exactly like the Cerritos event, meaning 10 weeks.
I don't think it's going to be 10 weeks. Because if we're talking about it being the same timeline as NX01, then it would be 100 days.
Well, NX01 is 90 days, right?
Yeah,
no,
but then I don't know. I don't know if it counts from, if May counts towards it, or when it comes from that. I can follow up. I can try and get that information and get back to you about it. But other than, whether it's counting now, I've been told it's coming in June at some point.
Yep. So
I guess my only request would be this is kind of the exact pattern of inconsistency with various communications regarding content. Like we've said that it's going to be like NX01, but now we're saying that the event is coming out a month later, and we don't know what the timeline is on it. I mean, these are some of the and again, I say communication has been great, and I'm going to let Rev move on to that point. Communication has been frequent, and I love that. You've been so visible, and I appreciate that. But there are these small little kinks in the armor, right, where we've got two conflicting pieces of information coming out. And really, more than that, if you consider that of the content creators who work closely with you guys. I mean, we have to share the blame too, but we're not Scopely's not blameless in this scenario. This whole acquisition path, I think, has kind of not been clear from the start. And I think all of the content creators as well, we got to do better. This was not a good month when it came to clarity of those communications and what the expectations were of the players.
Because I want to add in DJ's thing, hey, I'm so excited about May, can't wait for May, it's going to be amazing, was all built around the ability of this ship that is DOA. It's dead on arrival. Nobody cares about it. Nobody uses it because it doesn't affect the player base, right? And it's the idea of being able to drag my level 38 player up to a big armada or something like that. Well, Scopely is now not allowed that. And that was also a communication issue, because that's when we were talking about this coming out. That's something that we all said. Even Beck has acknowledged that that came out wrong, should have been said that way, was said incorrectly. I do, you know what, same thing that you said about Event Store Month. I do want to give credit to communications getting significantly better over the past 2 months.
Absolutely.
And you have pioneered that. But it's certainly not to that A+ level yet that we all want to get to for excellence. So these are just ways that it has to improve for the future, because we got a massive, set of things. I won't drop necessarily a hint, but a lot coming in the near future that is going to need really, really good communication.
But I'm in full agreement, and I would love for us to get to that point where we can start kind of filling in those gaps. Whether you're talking about the Gorn Eviscerator, whether you're talking about the event store, or the free to play, whatever. I think we have been doing a great job with communication, but we have further to go, and I want to get there at some point.
All right. Next up on our talking point is a big one, because it actually affects DJ. G5 and G6 leaderboards do have to give a thank you after feedback was presented. The FKR event split them into 2 sets. Now, this will not affect everybody who watches and listens to State of the Game. But for those that are unaware, since G6 has rolled out, level 51 through 70 players and all leaderboards have been mixed in together, with one exception of an XSLB that ran several months ago. DJ, I don't remember if it was 6 months ago. It's been a while. But basically that one exception, they've been lumped together. Now, in this past, after feedback this past week, FKR Reputation event was split based on player request. Is this something that we can see as a final breaching of the dam, if you will? Getting to the point where players have some level of separation, even if it's just for some events. Most people at this point know why they're mixed in together. But with FKR as an example and as a precedent, are we finally getting to a point where not everything is going to constantly be 51 through 70?
I would not describe it as a breach of the dam. That's a little dramatic.
Well, look.
Let's dial it back.
Who are you talking to, Hammy? Who are you talking to?
Dude, come on.
Damn it, Hammy! Come on, man!
Come on,
Jeez.
dude. Here's the thing. I was so happy that we finally did break up the brackets for this, because as an Ops 50 player, hearing from Ops 50s every time we ran an SLB, I felt their pain. Like, I knew what it was. And for us to rerun this event, finally with the brackets broken up for the first time, that's progress. Like, I was just happy to see us experiment, because we really did hammer away with kind of the SLB feedback that we got again and again and again. I think it shows that the team does listen, because, excuse me, we really let them know. And this is I think it's a positive first step. But I can't say that you're going to see more and more, especially at some of the bigger SLBs. You won't probably see them broken up anytime soon. But I think there could be cases like the FKR Reputation event, because those are wildly different. You can source rep completely differently, from the upper 60s than, say, the 50s. You disagree, DJ?
I mean, you can.
1,000%. I mean,
what do you disagree with?
No, I don't see why A is different than B. Yes, 60s can source rep wildly different than G6 players can source rep wildly different than G5, as is their ability to spend materials. Like, why is one not like the other? Especially when you look at the event, and like the G6 materials are worth hundreds of times more than G5. You tell me, why is this not like that? Why is one not like the other?
Honestly,
why?
Like, here's the thing. When we ran we had been getting feedback from the SLBs that we had been running this month, right? They peaked on the FKR Reputation one. That's the one that I saw the most frustration and anger on Discord. Like, that one struck a note.
Well, that's going to be because it's historically a grind event.
Yeah, I'm not discounting what you're saying and saying that there are other types of SLBs, but the Reputation, that was the one that really flared up more than what we saw, because we saw the, I saw a lot of the frustration on Monday mornings if we run them over the weekend, but not like the FKR rep. That one was
well, I'm like
very,
I feel very much like our Twitch user McShizman. So people weren't angry enough. Well, we just need to get angry about how the SLBs are.
no.
Yeah, that's just what we need to do. If it's a feedback thing, then we'll just give you more feedback.
Hammy, I feel like what you're saying is that the players were loud on this one, so they must care more. When I believe in reality, it's that this was yet another transgression of the violation of this barrier.
I would agree.
And we are so bludgeoned to death with the G5 to G6 leaderboards that we literally have no will to fight
I would
left.
say players have gotten apathetic to the SLBs. They've just accepted it, even though they want it to change. And just to give players an update, the number of Sigma players across the game still has not crossed the 3,000 player threshold. It's right under. So you have a lack of people in the 60s. And without literally pulling up every server, I can't tell you if there's a server out there with only 5 in the entire server. There might be. And the argument's going to come up if we keep pushing this that I've brought up to you yesterday, Hammy, where we give Sigma players their own SLB, but we limit the rewards. That way, if there are less people, we do that to try to, because you've heard this only, you call it the private server. I'm used to calling it the VIP Discord for the past 5 years. But you've heard this. Right. Even the G6 players feel that we're punishing G5 players because, as DJ points out, they can't spin mats and they don't get the same mats to spin. And they certainly can't do reputation the same way. There's a lot of layers to this conversation.
Yeah. Right. And actually something else we discussed, we had a very good discussion, I think, with Lighthawk about revisiting when we break the XSLBs into ops level. Because the general thought or impression over here was that it was very much disliked by kind of high ops players. But we need to understand that it was the region was the biggest factor to that happening, because if we can try that again, I would love to see that. I can't say that.
So real quick, let me catch DJ up. DJ, on that one, remember the XSLB being an issue, us bringing up the reason it was an issue, it wasn't just hated because it was an XSLB, but specifically, especially among our higher levels, that you had regions going against each other that shouldn't have been, especially because of currency, being a big factor there. So I mean, the amount that you would spend, say, €1 versus a pound versus $1. But having it be an XSLB wasn't necessarily an issue. It was how it was set up and the fact that they were broken, which for some reason, I don't feel like Scopely remembered that those were broken to begin with, let alone the region issue. They were just broken, period. But XSLB being another option to give Sigma players the ability to compete with each other. And that way you can give a reprieve to 50s. Yep.
I would love for us to try that again. If we get the regions right, if we get things set up. Because the discussion that we had during the week, it seemed like people were open to this idea. So I think that between taking at least this first step with the FKR rep event and going back to explore XSLBs, I still think this is like positive movement. I know that everybody wants every single SLB and XSLB now, broken up forever. But this is still a great first step. And I know that people want more, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we actually changed the brackets for an SLB.
I do want to put, I know DJ, I do want to put a little context to this. I do want to remind people that, or I want to say this, and this is something that hopefully I don't get a message from overlords about this later, but there's a lot of things that happen at Scopely, at specifically Star Trek Fleet Command, that people never see. And one big thing that's changed this year is how decisions are being made has changed. And that's as vaguely as I'll put it to make sure I don't get in trouble. But the reason I say that is there was a set way that would never change for years. DJ can attest to this. There were people in charge of certain areas of the game that had no wiggle room. Things were how they were, and they simply would never move on that. That paradigm is gone. Now, the patience that you need as a player hasn't changed, because Scopely still, in my opinion, moves way too slow. No offense, Hammy. I do. But there is less resistance to change, whereas before, and again, DJ support me on this. There was just certain walls that you would not break because people there would not allow a change.
I agree with that. And I feel like there has been positive momentum. I don't mean to dash your positivity, Hammy, because you're right. There's been a lot of things that have gotten a lot better. But there are still significant major hurdles, as in those walls, Rev, that you talk about. Some walls have never been able to be broken, and those walls still exist, right? And I kind of come back just as a counterpoint. Hammy, I don't necessarily disagree that the FKR thing was a good move, yet I don't view it with the same historical lens that you do, because the fact that G5 and G6 have been combined for so long is in itself unprecedented. We did not have this same kind of ops banding when G4 came out. We did not have this same kind of ops banding when G5 came out.
That's what I was going to ask, because that was before.
Well,
my
I brought that
time.
up to you yesterday. Right, it never happened then. Right now,
Right. How long was G5? How long was it until G5 was its own bracket, or was
immediately
it its own bracket?
day one?
Right.
Both of them released.
I think it might have been a month, Rev. It might have been a month.
I'd have to go back through old videos to verify. But I mean, we're talking.
It wasn't quick.
It wasn't 7 months. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
And G4, if I remember right, and for those who are in the Twitch, because I know there are plenty of y'all who've been playing just as long as me and DJ. If you remember, and you went up, because I know we have several of our VIPs and several of our Sigma players in the chat. If you remember, shout it out. But I remember G4 being an immediate, because everybody immediately went to the Valdor, and I remember, DJ remember this, it wasn't about buying the Valdor Katinga, it was go out and grind and soul, kill 6,000 ships. Scopely then changes the drop rate because people are getting the ships too easy, but they had their own set, right? And G6 is still mixed in. And I will also, and I will acknowledge openly on the game, anecdotal. I don't have numbers for this, but I feel way more people went into G4 and G5 than have gone into G6. Hence why we're in the predicament that we're in.
Maybe.
I don't expect you to have those numbers.
Well,
I'm simply saying
that's
about me
fundamentally,
watching. It's a different combo,
core.
but that is the core of why the LBs are what they are.
And the core of why that is sheer expense, all right, which is not a conversation for today, but everybody knows it. I mean, why G6 is the God-fearing amount of money that it is blows my mind. I mean, people can buy cars cheaper than what they could spend on a ship in G6. Be that as it may, it's not the same as it was in G5. It's not the same as it was in G4. And Lube is popping up in the chat, Rev. It was 30 days on G5. G4 was immediately. I seem to remember it being a 30-day period in G5. But again, as you say, certainly not 7 months. So I kind of come back and not necessarily for an answer, Hammy, just to counterpoint your point. Yeah. This is not precedent. This is not. So I don't look at the FKR event being broken out as a step of progression. I look at it quite differently than that, because it shouldn't still be this way anyway. All of this is regression because of how G4 and G5 launches were handled.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that. You do have a much bigger perspective on things, like when a new ops are opened up. I have to see it. Maybe it's just who I am. Maybe it's from kind of bashing my head into this again and again and again to finally get a little bit of movement. I still think it's positive.
I do want to be clear. We are not trying to dissuade the positive side of that, because I am acknowledging all the positive. I think DJ, it's more.
I guess what I'm saying is, why is it such a fight? Why are you bashing your head against the wall? Why are you having to fight so
we got
hard
the wrong
for
person
something
to be
that
asking
should
that.
make common sense?
I mean, here's the thing: as we get to bigger argument or bigger conversations, bigger topics, like I have been doing this for 2.5 years.
Yes,
and I've learned that sometimes to get these changes, it takes a while. Like, it's not something you can snap your fingers and do. You're not going to see progress overnight, and I know that's not a satisfying answer. But that's been my experience. Like when I've solved issues like the Sigma tax took me months, but it can be done. It can be done. And just getting like little breaks, and I was happy to see this. This made me very happy. I know that a lot of players want to see us go further, but we're doing it. I was just so stoked for that. But again, I understand the bigger issue. I know it seems like this is a plodding, long process, and I'm interested following up about why it's taken so much longer for G6 to get its own brackets. The same way, like, it sounds G5 was fast, G4 was even faster.
Yeah.
So, and I also still want to try to get that XSLB broken down by Ops again. I'd like to see if we can try that and do it right, because any type of solution or any type of progress is what I'm looking for right here. I'm not looking. I really doubt I have the ability to, snap my fingers and get change overnight. And I know these are issues that have been brewing for a long time, but honestly, the being unofficial, hearing this, day in and day out, it motivates me. And I got to latch on to the forward progress.
And I do want to shout something out real quick, because State of the Game is definitely not meant to be a bashing session. So we do want to highlight positives.
Let's not forget. I know. This is a pretty good month. This is a pretty good month.
It has been.
Okay.
It has been.
I'm
sorry.
DJ.
I'm being a Debbie Downer. I'm sorry.
DJ, it's okay. But I do want to highlight something for players, because we do want, again, one of the reasons State of the Game stopped, because it became we'll get back to you on this. I do want to push something positive that you might not be hearing because of legitimate frustrations, especially if you are in the 50s. We've had conversations this week about re-exploring things like the XSLB to give Sigma players their own brackets. We've had conversations, and when I say have conversations, I'm not talking about just, nice pleasantries. Sitting down with Live Ops saying, we want to explore this. Is Live Ops open to this? And getting the answer, yes, we are open to exploring this, and we are going to discuss it. Here's why we had hesitations. So part of State of the Game is us telling you talking points that we are already pushing, and then trying to push them further. The reason I use the whole breaching of the dam thing is because when the dam starts breaking, there's only a little bit of spout going through. And I want to be like the Juggernaut and just go ahead and push through it. But that only happens if you keep pushing.
Yeah, no.
So,
no. We got to dial that back, man.
I can't. I'm a maverick. That's what I am. I'm going to give you 100%, clip my wings. I'm going to come down burning, and it's going to be fun.
I love a good analogy, but I'm not feeling that one.
I do want to come out and agree with you that I appreciate the change made in the FKR event. I'm sure everybody in G5 appreciated that change. I'm not saying that it wasn't appreciated. I'm just saying, hey, let's apply the same logic to a lot of other problem areas in the game. I do appreciate that. I do view it as a positive. I'm glad that you were excited about it. I'm sure G5 was. I merely say, hey, great work. Now let's take the same logic and apply it to some of these other pain point areas. It's just a point of feedback. But I do appreciate the work that went into it. And I know, by the way, that there was extra work involved in separating those brackets. I know that Live Ops spent additional time
rewriting that event. There was a specific Live Ops person who came and did that. Like, there had to be personnel redeployed. Now, we can definitely agree, community should never been this way to begin with. But that doesn't matter. Like, that point, we can shout it at our top of our lungs.
Yes.
Easy as a player to say that. Getting things actually changed, right? I do want to not lose the positive. We're taking baby steps. I want to be running full speed. I do want to rotate because I have to keep us structured, because me, DJ, and Hammy all are people who talk too much. So, next topic.
No.
Quality of life changes. Now, one thing that you have already openly said, and we talked about this on the last day of the game, a personal project that you have, keep in mind, this is recent because you've only recently taken this role, is to push at least one major quality of life addition each month. That's the goal. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Now, this month, we can argue whether it was a quality of life change because no feature came out. So maybe that's the quality of life change in itself. But there is a quality of life change coming soon. I don't remember yesterday in the conversation if we could hint when that was going to be. But how are we on that project? In terms of focusing on quality of life changes coming to the game, as well as when y'all bring content, but bringing in other things that make the gameplay better.
There is something that I can actually reveal tonight, this evening. I do need to put the stipulation is, because when it comes to quality of life, it's never 1,000% that it's going to make it in the release. But right now, it is on track for that. We will be putting in basically a new feature to be able to organize officers by abilities. And I've seen kind of the demo of it, and it's really, really cool, because this is something that even as kind of a player who's been playing for like 2, plus years, I still need help figuring out which officer I need for what. And you can honestly, and the way that I saw it, again, this might change. I don't know if it's going to make it for the arc, but that's the plan right now. You can do multiple selections. So you can do like crit chance or warp speed or, mining or whatever, and you can kind of cross-reference all the different abilities. I think it's amazing. I think this is so cool. I think it'll help a lot of players, especially new players, really kind of streamline which officers they should be using and how to find them and how to use them the best way. I'm excited for this. I really hope we can roll it out, with the ARC launch. I do have to stipulate, sometimes things change at the last minute, but I'm excited for this.
And to confirm, this isn't like a Prime or an FT, or this is just a quality of life update.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So
I think that is amazing. I think it's awesome, especially as you mentioned, and I see in the chat, for non-G5 players. And I'm sorry, we did a G5 conversation there a minute ago, so I apologize to Nocturnus. But for example, even being a G3 or G4 or a newer player to the game, Rev, this is going to be so great for people learning about what all the officers do. When we started in the game, there was 18 officers. And you look at it now. Now
it started at 43, but still, we're at 200 plus.
Okay, fine. Back in my day, Rev.
Gosh.
But, I mean, we are
Pap
way
all over here. We
it.
only had Kirk and Spock, and there was nobody else.
That was all that mattered anyway. Okay,
It was. Kirk,
that was
Spock,
it.
Bones. That's it. And then you got Khan at 28. Game changing.
But especially for new players coming into the game, so many different officer abilities, so many different officers now. I think that's a great change, Hammy. I'm super excited about that because even for experienced players, once in a while, we'll get them wrong, Rev. I'm thinking, what does this person do? Oh, they don't work against this. Or, oh, that's crit damage. I thought it was chance. Yeah. I mean, those kinds of slip-ups happen. I think this is a great change for everybody in the game, but it's a great educational tool.
And again, this is part of Hammy, obviously content creators push for this. Official mods, want to make sure we give them shout outs because they do a lot of work with the official Discord. But these are things that we push for heavily, but you have said yourself, quality of life, getting at least one major one is something that you take on as a project. And for those who didn't hear it clearly, the feature planned to roll out this update, that is a quality of life update, is a much better sorting tool to allow you to find officer abilities and how they work, to apply them to your ships. And this is hopefully, correct me if I'm wrong, a string of things that we should be seeing for quality of life for the next few months. I'm not asking you to reveal some of the things that we've talked about, but this is not the only thing. So there are other things being worked on at the same time. Now, I did ask you to look into something about a project that was being worked on last year, and we talked about it yesterday, and you said you wrote it down. Did you ever find out about that one, or should we just skip that part?
That turned into a real kind of circular.
Okay.
Sir.
The good news is we do have a definite quality of life.
The axe. It got the axe, man.
But to Rev's point, there are at least a couple other things that are coming down the line. I
actually see one of them listed in the chat.
I know. Listen, there's really only two things I want. All right, both of them are in the chat right now. So
so there are some things being worked on. That's good.
This is probably for the best, since the whole sound and thing issue is throwing me off. I can't really see the chat. I'm just staring at the Discord chat because that's the only thing that doesn't have a delay right now. I can't say what they are, but I've been working with Beck, and Beck's been working with the team, and there are a couple more pretty good ones on the way. I don't know if they're going to be this month or next month or the month after, but they're...
The only one this month from who I've talked to is the one we just talked about. But again, I think that's okay. Now, I'm not saying that I only want one quality of life, but as long as I'm getting movement, a guaranteed quality of life. Not every month has to be X Borg, although that would be amazing again. But as long as we're getting legitimate, real changes based on things players not only want, but need to make this gameplay more manageable, that's a big positive. And I definitely wanted to highlight that here in tonight's State of the Game.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I like I said, I'm going to try and get a quality of life. It's not just me, though. It's the team as well. Whether or not we can get it for every month, that's TBD. But whenever we get one out, I really hope that players kind of appreciate just making the game just a little bit easier.
Yeah. DJ, you got any thoughts on that? That's our last major topic before we do a quick Q&A roundtable for as long as Hamster wants to stick around.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.